we see over the years is that everyone has a slightly different reason for being at Startup Weekend, and then everyone gets something different out of Startup Weekend, and it may be what you were expecting, maybe something else entirely. You know, the journey will prove that out over time. But what I want to talk a little bit about is what's different about the Startup Weekend, being that focus on social enterprise and education. So we've experimented around New Zealand with a few different what we call verticals for Startup Weekend. So we've done social enterprise in Wellington once before, we've tried education, there's an environment one in Wellington as well. And what we're really pushing towards is thinking, what's this format able to do to help prepare people for dealing with the world that we're facing? And if you think about where we're at in the world at the moment, we're at a pretty interesting time. There's quite a few inflection points that we're crossing. If you look at technology, there's a lot that's possible now that wasn't possible even 5 years ago, even 1 year ago. And there's the accelerating pace of that change. The concepts of lean startup, the ability to build something really quickly in small groups of people. There's a whole lot of ways of levering into a system now. There's a lot of ways of getting things done with small amounts of resources. And that's really exciting. And so Startup Weekend is often talking about and approaching, okay, how do we use these new tools to build stuff? But at the same time, with those positive inflection points about what's possible, there's a whole bunch of big systemic risk that's present in the world at the moment. And so if you think about financial risk, if you think about climate risk, if you think about political and social risk, we're kind of at unprecedented times in terms of the load that's being put on some of the systems that the planet is operating on. And so, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. We've got this ability to do stuff, and we've got a really important thing that we have to do. And that covers sort of multiple spheres of opportunity. And so the point of this Startup Weekend is to say, well, who do we have to be in order to be able to operate in that world? What are the sets of tools that we need in order to be able to do the lean startup, to prototype ideas, to test them with real customers, to develop them, to iterate, to do all of that stuff, to work in groups? And then what are the things we're trying to change in the world? How do we understand the problems that we're trying to solve? How do we understand the stakeholders and who has those problems and how to affect change in those systems? And so what we're trying to do is sort of package that together and say, okay, what are the skills I need in order to be able to see the world in the right way, to collaborate with others, to make things happen? So that's what the weekend's about.
Sort of things around why we might want to change education, why we think that education as a focus for a vertical startup weekend might be a good idea. So I've kind of a couple of points here, but the first point is that we're all experts in education, which is good in some respects and bad in others. And when I say we're all experts in education, I mean that in the sense that we've all been through the education system in some way, shape or form, so maybe still going through it. That's really good in some respects, but it also means that we kind of know what it is and maybe struggle to actually imagine it being completely different from the way we currently know it and the way we've experienced it ourselves. We also think of it kind of, you know, the way that we do need to change it. Often people talk about skills shortages and education keeping up with industry and those kind of things. And while that might be the case, education as an entity isn't just around kind of, it's not about just dealing with the anxieties of the present, about kind of filling the skills shortages and dealing with that training sort of thing, but it is about something that, it's about focusing on the future and effectively creating the future through what we do in the present. So whilst there'll be some really good ideas that come out that maybe kind of cater to industry and they're all really, really good, one of the things that we're kind of thinking about with this is that how can we actually create the future through the kind of ideas that we generate during the Startup Weekend and the whole kind of movement of people around that particular event. So we're thinking about the future, and we're thinking about education being a mechanism to create it. The future is really, really different. As Ro was talking about earlier on, some of the things that are happening with technology and some of the inflection points we're going through, the future is looking to be very, very different from what we currently have. And with that in mind, we need to think completely differently about the way we do education, what it's for. And one of the things that, you know, I'm going to allude to a little bit is this idea of kind of, if we think of education a lot of the moment about how it can cater to industry and how it can help people get jobs, with some of the way that technology is working at the minute, some of those jobs that we might be kind of preparing for might not exist anymore. So one of the things we might need to be thinking about is instead of thinking about what we want our kids to be or what we want people to be when they're older, it might be who we want them to be and the type of person that they are. So we actually sort of non-industrialize education in terms of its focus. And also the fact that we think of education for developing people to grow up, we also kind of need to think about what about the education for grown-ups. Even if we don't have any jobs to kind of get people into, even if we kind of end up with work being something that's very different, it's not necessarily defined by careers or jobs, there's going to be some really big challenges, or there already are some really big challenges that we need to deal with. We need to be thinking really, really differently about those. And we need to be starting to think about education focusing on the creation of new knowledge. So instead of just being able to kind of learn about the discoveries of others, how can we help people make more discoveries themselves? Actually sort of shifting the focus maybe from knowledge consumption to knowledge creation, and how we might need a different system to actually cater to those kind of things. At the moment, when we think about knowledge creation, we tend to think about it being something that's capable of, that only the elite people are capable of, only a very select few of our society. And this, to me, and a lot of people, seems like a big waste in kind of human potential and opportunity. So the imperative I was hoping that we could start this evening is thinking about, that's where you come in, is how can we create different opportunities, create different systems, create enterprises that actually allow us to actually help everybody in the population to be the people that might be able to create new knowledge, help everybody in the population to actually be able to use education as a way of sort of emancipating them and allowing them to create the future that they deserve, or the futures that we all kind of want in our societies. I saw a thing last week and I thought this is kind of a neat idea, that startups always usually think about developing an MVP, a minimum viable product, for those of you that may be new to the term. And the way I kind of thought we might think about this is that, yeah, we're going to create MVPs, but with the focus of creating a minimum viable transformation. How can we take really small actions today in our lean teams that actually start accelerating into something that actually becomes bigger, and actually start changing the way that we think about education and changing the way we do it to cater to the futures that we want to create, rather than the futures we've always had in the past. If that makes sense, if you can have a future in the past. So that was just kind of a little bit of a starting point, that we really wanted to kind of try and focus people on thinking completely differently, not just like building enterprises that will kind of cater to the demands of where we are right now, because it'd be really easy, not necessarily really easy, but it's very possible to create an education business, an education startup that actually reinforces some of the systems that we've got at the moment. And the focus from our perspective, as an imperative, is to actually try and use that same passion, that same energy, to actually start to create something completely different.
So social enterprise for Startup Weekend is going to be quite interesting. And social enterprise we might know a little bit about, or a lot about, but generally when you type in social enterprise you see a spectrum. A spectrum with a number of definitions, and a number of definitions defined by people who are quite knowledgeable and people who aren't necessarily very knowledgeable in the space. And basically there's this grey area that social enterprise sort of lives in between a for-profit business and a charity. In that sort of grey area there's a number of various different things there. But I suppose the underlying core theme of it all is that it's impact first, it's solving a problem. Its primary reason for existence is to do something good in the world, solving a social or environmental problem. And in the previous discussion we were talking about these two models, an impact model and a business model. And Rowan was saying before, and chip in when you feel around, where a for-profit business might have a business model, but might not necessarily have an impact model. But a charity, whereas a charity will have an impact model, but not necessarily have a business model. But a social enterprise will have the both. And instead of it being seen as a one core solid thing, it's more of an idea, right? It's more of a process, it's more of a principle, and a way of looking at things.
So I think, just to add into that, if you think about a charity, it has an impact model. So any good charity should understand from a systemic level what it's trying to achieve. So if a charity is going in and digging wells in a developing nation, rather than just going, hey, people need water, let's dig a well, they should have an impact model. They should understand the system that is causing they want to solve, and they should understand that a well is a point of leverage that will change something in that system that will lead to the impact that they want. Because the impact is not everybody has a well. The impact will be something long-term and systemic, like the livelihood or the well-being of people that are suffering. And so the impact model is the story that explains what, how that happens, why it happens, and it's backed up by evidence that proves there's good. And so any good charity has an impact model that explains that. And any good business has a business model. Any business in any way succeeding has a business model. And that's the model that tells you what the inputs and outputs of the business are. Who your customers are, what value you create for them, what they purchase from you, how much money you make from that, how much it costs for you to deliver it. And that model has to be tested and validated with evidence to show that it works. And so we think of social enterprise as an organization with a social environmental purpose, which is its reason for being, that trades. Always a business model to make it happen. We're thinking of social enterprise more like a verb than a noun. If that makes sense. So if it was a noun, it's like, am I a social enterprise? Do I fit the definition? Can I carry the label? Actually, anyone can call themselves a social enterprise. It doesn't matter. But we're talking about social enterprise as a verb, which is the activity of using a business model to deliver an impact model to create some change.
So I suppose leading up to startup weekends, I think I suppose one takeaway that you can take away is think about a problem, something that angers you, something that frustrates you, something that you don't believe should be happening in the world. Maybe doing a little bit of the 5 whys. It always helps to do it with someone and just tell them a bit of the process or read up on it on Google and get them to ask you these 5 whys. Why is that important? Why is that happening? Why is that really happening? And get to this real sort of horrible problem